Yale School of Drama, Henry. Come on, you know you can do it.
Henry Winkler's renowned portrayal of Happy Days adored Fonzi helped make him a household figure. However, tensions were building behind the scenes on the set, and things weren't as great as they had appeared. Join us as we delve into the unexpected facts of Henry Winkler's on-set troubles and reveal the drama behind the scenes. The show launched many others. When the Happy Days series was at the height of its popularity, it was so successful that it spawned several spin-offs, which producers produced to capitalize on the show's fame. Laverne and Shirley first aired from 1976 until 1983 and was probably the most successful. Following his initial appearance on the show as the extraterrestrial Mork, Robin Williams became so well-liked that he was offered his very own show, Mork and Mindy, which aired from 1978 until 1982. In addition, there was the top-rated but short-lived television show Joni Loves Chachi, which aired from 1982 to 1983. Is it possible that Fonzie would have been? Although we cannot fathom it now, the legendary Henry Winkler was not the first choice to play the role of Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli. When they were looking for someone to play the role, they had their sights set on Mickey Dolenz, who had previously been a member of the Monkees. He participated in the audition process for the role, but in the end it was determined that his height of 6 feet was excessive. Instead, they decided to cast Winkler, who was around the same height as the other cast members. Fonzie hurt Richie Cunningham's feelings. Winkler stated during his appearance on Inside the Actors Studio that his role, Fonzie, became so popular that it took away screen time from Richie Cunningham, who Ron Howard played. In our 4th year, we traveled to a dude ranch and rode wild bulls for a 2-partner experience. I had to take a seat on a bull. On my way home in Ron Howard's Volkswagen, I asked him to explain what was happening. "May I ask how you're doing? We haven't discussed this topic." Winkler revealed that the individual who made the statement said, "You didn't do anything other than be good at what you're doing. On the set, you never do anything that would make you appear to be the center of attention. Moreover, it's beneficial to the show. Although it was hurtful to my sentiments, it was a positive thing for the show." After resolving the show's politics, the two maintained their friendship and moved on. Avoiding conflict. The Vietnam War was in full swing when Happy Days was in the development stage of its production. Additionally, the United States of America had a system of conscription that was in operation until 1973. Any man between 17 and 45 might be called to fight anytime. The individual in question, Ron Howard, was of that age range and strongly desired to avoid going to war. Because he knew that a contract with a major company such as Paramount would help him avoid being drafted, he decided to accept the role of Richie Cunningham when it was presented to him. Jumping the shark. The phrase "jumping the shark" is an expression you're undoubtedly familiar with. It's a term used to describe when a popular television show starts to lose its ratings and decides to add something dramatic or absurd to the plot to regain its audience. You may be unaware that Happy Days was the source of this idea. The ratings started to decrease as the years passed, so they broadcast a gimmicky episode in which the Fonz leaps a shark while water skiing. Of course, he did this while wearing his leather jacket. The theme song. We're willing to bet you're humming the Happy Days melody as you watch this. It's undoubtedly one of the most well-known and memorable theme songs featured in television history. However, were you aware that the famous song was not included in the opening credits until the beginning of the 3rd season? A song by Bill Haley and his Comets called "Rock Around the Clock" was played at the start of the show's first 2 seasons. In the 1950s, the decade that served as the backdrop for the television show, Happy Days, this song had been a hit for a long time. The final credits of these first 2 seasons featured a brief excerpt from the song Happy Days, which was played after the credits had rolled. Fonzie memorabilia. Fonz's motorcycle and leather jacket were arguably the 2 items that brought him fame, other than his hair styled in a slick back. Can you tell me where these well-known props ended up? A duplicate of the jacket, taken from the Happy Days set, is currently on display at the Smithsonian Institution. The original coat was stolen. A less prestigious outcome was in store for the motorcycle. When the 1949 Triumph Trophy TR5 was placed up for auction in 2011, it was anticipated to sell between $60,000 and $80,000. However, no one decided to purchase it. Joni Loves Chachi. Happy Days was initially based on the idea that Richie Cunningham, his parents, Howard and Marion, and his pal Potsy were the primary characters in the show. On the other hand, as the series went on, we were introduced to a more significant number of individuals, some of whom ultimately played significant roles. In later years, one of the most popular stories was the love story between Richie's younger sister Joni and Chachi. This eventually led to the creation of the spin-off series Joni Loves Chachi, a continuation of the original storyline. Fans were overcome to learn that the performers had a romantic relationship outside the show. The cartoon spin-off. We've seen some of the more well-known spin-offs that resulted from the popularity of Happy Days. However, a couple of others were not as well-known. It's hard to believe, but one of these was a cartoon broadcast on Saturday mornings. The Fonz was the primary character in this project, titled The Fonz and the Happy Days Gang. He's accompanied by a dog named Mr. Cool throughout the entire story. They journey through time with Richie and Ralph Malph, experiencing adventures in a malfunctioning time machine. Between 1980 and 1981, the show was on for 2 series. Thinking ahead. When Henry Winkler signed his contract for the character of the Fonz, he was allowed to accept a lower income than the other cast members. However, the agreement stipulated that he would receive some profits from syndication and merchandise. Because he didn't know whether or not the show would be successful, this was a bit of a risk. He could have walked away with only a tiny monthly compensation. On the other hand, it was a risk that ultimately paid off, as Winkler acquired more than $35 million due to it. TV show starter. The hit television show Happy Days served as the inspiration for several popular television shows. The television sitcoms Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, and Joni Loves Chachi are examples of these spin-off applications. The series, Laverne and Shirley, chronicled the exploits of 2 young women who were friends and worked at a brewery in Milwaukee. The television show Mork and Mindy featured Robin Williams in the role of an extraterrestrial being hailing from the planet Orc. Joni Loves Chachi was a television show that focused on the romantic bond that existed between Chachi Arcola and Joni Cunningham. In addition to being highly well-liked in their own right, each of the 3 shows contributed to establishing Happy Days as one of the most economically successful television franchises in history. Fighting for their dues. Several other ensemble members had also signed a contract that would give them a portion of any items sold related to Happy Days. However, it turned out that they had some difficulty convincing CBS and Paramount to pay them. There was a lawsuit brought in 2011 by the actors Marion Ross, Erin Moran, Donnie Most, and Anson Williams to obtain the money they were entitled to. They asserted that the studios owed them $10 million, but in the end, they were only eligible to get $65,000 each for their difficulties. Erin Moran became homeless. According to the Daily Mail, Moran's final years were marred by financial difficulties and homelessness. This was because she was evicted from the trailer park apartment that she shared with her mother-in-law after a drunken brawl and was, after that, homeless. As of late, Moran has been making headlines due to the difficulties she was experiencing financially, her struggles with depression, and her experiences of being homeless. It was said that she had slept in motels and that she had even gotten into a fight with her mother-in-law while she was under the influence of alcohol. It's believed that the deceased individual, who was 56 years old, had died as a result of an overdose of heroin in the presence of emergency services. You're the One That I Want. The Fonz ended up being one of the most popular characters in the series, even though he was only intended to play a supporting role in the show. As a result of this, Henry Winkler became a highly sought-after actor in film and television industries. Winkler was the actor that the producers of the film Grease had in mind when they were looking for someone to play the role of Danny Zuko. On the other hand, Winkler could not fulfill the requirements for the legendary role since he lacked the necessary singing abilities. As we know, John Travolta was ultimately cast in the role. Getting back together. Ron Howard, who portrayed the character of Richie Cunningham, went on to have a successful career as a producer and director, working on films such as The Da Vinci Code and Apollo 13. This is something that you may or may not be aware of. Additionally, Howard served as an executive producer on the critically acclaimed television sitcom Arrested Development. Two of his co-stars from Happy Days were cast in supporting parts on the program. Henry Winkler plays the role of Barry Zuckerkorn, an incompetent family lawyer, and Scott Baio plays Bob Loblaw, his replacement, who is known for his smooth-talking manner. Recognizing their past. Because Henry Winkler is a cast member of Arrested Development, the writers could not pass up the opportunity to pay homage to the character he played in the original series. And of course, they did it in a manner consistent with the show's peculiar humor. In a particular moment, Winkler's lawyer character is seen performing the traditional hairstyling motion that Fonzi is known for in front of the mirror. Winkler is seen in another scene on a pier where he's confronted by a baby shark that's blocking his route. To proceed with his journey, he must jump the shark. Using the show for good. The characters on a program will inevitably become role models when the show achieves the level of popularity that Happy Days did back in the day. One of the people who approached director Gary Marshall was asking him if he might utilize his influence for a worthy cause, encouraging children to read. One episode featured a plot involving the Fonz going to his neighborhood library to borrow a book. The writers included this plot in the episode. What's the result? A triumphant end. A week after the show was broadcast, there was a 500% rise in the number of people signing up for library cards. Ron's reference. Even though Happy Days was produced in the 1970s and the show was set in the 1950s, which allowed the writers to experiment with different stories, in a particular episode, the Cunninghams go to the theater to watch a movie, and later on they remark how the boy in the film resembles Richie. The Music Man was the movie's name that happened to be true. In addition, Ron Howard, who was a child actor at the time, was the actor who performed the role of Winthrop Peru, the young kid in the movie. Faking it. The image of the Fonz as a demanding motorcycle rider was synonymous with his notoriety, as we've already mentioned. When you find out that Henry Winkler did not ride the renowned bike in any of the episodes of Happy Days, you'll undoubtedly be taken aback by this information. The fact of the matter was that Winkler could not ride a motorcycle. It was difficult for him to coordinate the brake and throttle since he has dyslexia, which is a condition that he suffers from. By affixing the motorcycle to a platform and towing it behind a vehicle, they could circumvent the problem. The signature style. One thing you might have noticed about the first season of Happy Days is that the Fonz does not frequently appear on the show wearing his signature leather jacket. Rather than that, he donned a windbreaker comparable to the one that James Dean wore in the film Rebel Without a Cause. When the plot was being recorded in 1974, the network feared that a character wearing a leather jacket would be perceived as a criminal. This is why this was possible. As the ratings continued to rise, the network began to soften its policies, which allowed the Fonz to adopt his unique style. More of Ron's past. In the episode My Favorite Orkin, which features the first appearance of Robin Williams in his role as Mork, who settles down to watch an episode of The Andy Griffith Show, there was another reference to Ron Howard's days as a kid actor. Also featured in this episode was the first appearance of Robin Williams. Mork expresses his enjoyment of the show, expressing his special fondness for the character of Opie, who was Andy Griffith's only child. The character of Opie was portrayed on the actual show by none other than a younger version of Ron Howard, who was in charge of the part from the years 1960 to 1968. Musical moments. Happy Days protagonists spend a significant amount of their free time at Arnold's restaurant, known for having a jukebox tucked away in the restaurant's corner. Cast member Anson Williams, Potsy, is responsible for singing a significant number of the songs you hear, even though many are well known. Among the cast members, Potsy was not the only one who could carry a tune. Based on their singing performances on the popular television show, recording contracts were offered to both Anson Williams and Scott Baio, who played the role of Chachi. Hitting the charts. The fact that Happy Days maintained its enormous popularity and ran for a long time speaks much about its influence on popular culture. We're familiar with how the program came up with the phrase "jumping the shark," but the show's other characters and catchphrases remain memorable. A list of the 50 greatest TV dads of all time was released in TV Guide in the year 2004, and Howard Cunningham, who played Tom Bosley, was ranked as 9th on the annual list. Happy Days was number 8 on a list of the top 20 catchphrases used in television, with "sit on it" being the Fonz's favorite catchphrase. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon